So what I'm about to do today may or may not be a good idea. Great way to start a video, right? So first let me give you a little backstory on what I'm doing and why. So standing over here on this side yard, this is something that was a full renovation about 3-4 years ago now. I can't even remember, it's been a while, and at the time I seeded a 50-50 rye bluegrass, and since then I've overseeded a few times with more ryegrass. So the mixture in here, who knows what it is right now. There's definitely bluegrass in here, and there's definitely plenty of rye. So what I've learned over time though is personally, I like to keep the grass types separate. So if I want a bluegrass lawn, I just want bluegrass. If I want a ryegrass lawn, I just want rye. If I want fescue, I want fescue. There's no real problem with mixing grass types, but I have learned that probably there's a reason why if you do a blue rye, you should keep it majority blue and less rye. Or if you do a fescue blue, you should keep it majority fescue and then a small amount of blue just to hold that sod together. The reason that I say that is that I think what I've learned with this over here is that it starts to have some interesting texture looks to it. Especially when it gets really, really thick and you're mowing low, then I've just noticed that those textures are fine together. From a bird's eye view here, it looks absolutely perfect. But if you get down, look really closely, you'll see some of those grass types going on together that maybe that ratio that I used wasn't exactly perfect. All things that are not the end of the world by any means, but a learning curve. So I'll show you a spot like this. You'll see some of these pieces. They haven't been getting cut, so you end up with a long piece like this. Now everything gets rolled over with the reel mower, so you don't really notice that stuff, but as it gets so thick, it's hard to get the texture to be exactly the way that you want it. And you can see here, you can't see down to the soil. Nothing you can see here. It's just a huge mat of grass, which is good, but your mower starts to float over top of this and roll all this grass constantly. And then sometimes you'll find pieces like this throughout that really aren't getting cut because it just keeps rolling. And as I said, all this grass starts going sideways instead of up. It gets to a point where the mower is just hovering over top and not cutting down into it very much. So having said all that, I'm at a time frame right now where this thing is already beyond thick for the season. If you look back from earlier this year when I first started mowing, you'll notice such a huge difference in just the density of it. Now that was early season, so it shouldn't be super thick, but it got to a point already where I think I need to do something with it. Well, the reason why I'm opening this video with saying this may or may not be a good idea is because the timing of this is not absolutely what I would prefer. But looking at the forecast, we happen to have about a 2-week stretch here where June weather here could be super hot or it could be somewhat mild. And it looks like we're going to be in mostly the 70s, 50s at night. So that's actually not a bad time for me to attempt to do a bit of renovation on this. So the first thing I'm gonna do today is I'm going to mow this section down lower. And I'm willing to sacrifice the look of this thing over here for some experiments that are going to go on today. And this I'm going to not go as drastic on, so I'm probably not going to mow that down. I'm going to leave it where it is. But this one I'm going to cut down, I'd say maybe to 1/2 inch if I can get it, and then we'll go from there and explain what's going to happen. Especially since I'm going to be cutting lower than I have been, I want to make sure that this reel is cutting clean. And this is something that I do pretty much close to every mow anyway. Just a touch over here. Good. So remember, it's a very simple adjustment on this. Just loosen this right here. Sorry it's so bright today, but that's the way it goes. And then I'm going to go down to, like I said, right about 1/2 inch. So first of all, I know that's extremely probably painful to watch, and it's painful for me to do because definitely that's a big time scalp. But what it does do is reveal to me, which I'll show you a close-up, just how thick this grass is, which I already knew, but this is the whole point of what I'm doing today. Also the fact that once you get down to about 1/2 inch or so, you will definitely notice what is not even, and that's also what I'm going to work on today, is trying to get this to be slightly smoother, especially this spot out here. It's one area that needs some smoothing in terms of leveling work, so that's also why I wanted to cut it down. The reason for that is that anytime you're using a reel mower and you want to come cut it low, then the thing is that you don't want that reel going right back into the sand if you put sand down or whatever material you do. So check this out, how thick and matted it is down underneath that canopy. See right here, so you see all these blades, they're just all matted sideways. You can come in here, pick this all up like this, and you'll see all this stuff texture wise that has not been really getting cut. It just gets pushed over, and there you go. This whole thing though looks like that. So I'm going to do a couple things today to try to remedy this. The first thing is going to be verticutting. I'm going to use this tool right here to slice through that super thick grass. We're not going to go super drastic, but enough that we can give it some air and some room to breathe and spread out again. One of the benefits I think to any of these systems that have these cartridges is that you can utilize this machine to be more than just a mower. So I think that's important because for most people, they just don't want a whole bunch of different equipment. You know, as fun as it is to have a lot of equipment, you also have to find a place to put it, and so that becomes difficult sometimes. So on here, I'm going to take out this cartridge. I'm going to raise this thing up all the way, and then I'm going to remove this belt just like that and take this off of the reel. Can be fairly snug. This to loosen right here that's holding it in, and the same thing on the other side, and then this thing will just lift out of there. Just like that. Get it lined up. Okay. These go back in to hold that new cartridge in place. Then you just put the belt back on. This can be not really tricky, but it's just, obviously it's a belt, it's meant to be snug in there, so sometimes it does take some finessing to get it back. But you get it like that, and then this has to go underneath, just like that. So I'm gonna put this over on the grass and see if I can adjust it down to where these should be biting in. So I know I may look ridiculous in this thing, but I've been getting my neck burnt the last couple seasons, even though I use sunscreen, but when I'm out all day long, sometimes in the hot sun it just doesn't seem to matter, so I started this year trying to protect my neck a little more. Might look ridiculous, but what are you gonna do? It's all over here. Alright, so I've cut this in two directions, so I just went this way and then this way. You could keep doing this all day depending on how aggressive you want it to get. There's more to do after this. First I'm gonna go through this side yard with that verticutter real quick, just do one pass through there, not two, and then I'll get to the next step of this spot. So now I get to take that verticutter out of there, and I'm going to put this thing in right here just to comb through the grass, and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to put this on the grass so that I can see what I'm doing with the height. I don't need to be too aggressive on this. I really just want it to be combing somewhere probably around there. So I think this is looking really good now. Remember when I started, you could not see down to the soil layer at all. It's just all a big matting of grass, but now you can see there's room for these plants to start spreading out again. They have some room to breathe, and I really didn't go even that aggressive on it. You could obviously do more if you were going into your fall season, but I want to just test this as is and see that I've opened it up, but I haven't destroyed it by any means, and see how it comes back. So now I'm gonna do one more mow on that at a 1/2 inch again, because there's some stragglers that have been picked up just from combing through that and also verticutting. I'm just gonna comb through this section over here. I did the verticutting once, I'm gonna comb through it once, and then I may do just one slight comb through of the front, but I'm not sure on that yet.
So after that, you can see just how many those stragglers are pulled up, and once I mow again, should get a lot of this cut more evenly. So this is a sand that I had left from last season's top dressing that I did in the fall time, and I saved the rest of it over here. So what I've learned over the years is that dumping a whole pile of sand on here, just coming over here with the gorilla cart and dumping this thing on here, it's harder to get an even coat, and it very quickly gets really heavy as far as the sand goes. So it is more work. But I like to come in now and I like to actually just use the shovel and fling this out on here as even as possible and as light as possible, so that if there's areas that I don't want a whole lot of sand, I don't smother everything right away. So now I have this leveling rake. So what this works great for is just to work in the sand, get a level surface with this thing. You just glide it across here and watch the sand go down into the canopy of the grass. See, there's just much thinner grass here from the mow, and here there's a lot greener grass, which means it didn't cut as much off. So this is a low spot. So that's really all there is to it. You can work as much as you want on every single little detail that you want to try to fix. You can also use this tool with topsoil or some other materials that you want to spread. Just remember that it's best if it just glides across the surface. You're not trying to do too much physical work with it. You're just letting it be the guide of where the low and high spots are and pulling all that material into the low spots off of the high spots. So it works really well. You can get super tedious with this stuff if you're a perfectionist like me. Sometimes I just have to let it go.
When we get together, gonna be good vibes, keeps on getting better. We can watch the sunrise.
You didn't think I was doing all the rest of this by hand, did you?
Keep on walking that road. Been a long night, but I'm still fighting.
So a few years ago, I had the opportunity to rent one of these machines, and unfortunately our rental place here locally doesn't have that machine anymore. So after that last video where I said this thing's not available locally anymore, the kind people at Ecolawn got in touch with me and asked if I wanted to try out one of these again on some of my top dressing projects. Of course I said absolutely, I would love to. This thing is going to help me immensely on my ongoing projects, not only here, but once I get moved, I'm going to have plenty of top dressing projects to do in the future as I try to re-level and do everything that I've done here at this current property out at our new one once we get our house built. So today this is going to be my first time trying this thing out. The rest of the lawn I'm just going to put a light top dressing on, and this is going to allow me to do that without smothering anything and without breaking my back and having to do it all with a shovel. If you can't find one of these locally, reach out to your rental places and see if they can possibly get one of these. I think many homeowners would like this. You can use it for compost, you can use it for topsoil, you can use it for so many things to spread evenly and not have to do it all by hand. In hindsight, this maybe wasn't the greatest place to put a sand pile, but I just didn't have much choice. I can see this thing rolling on down the hill here, so I gotta be careful.
I'm pushing past the edge. I see the light ahead on the dark side, but the sun is rising. I'm not giving up hope. It's a good day coming. It's a good day coming. It's a good day, sweet like honey. It's a good day coming. Gonna keep on running. Won't stop for nothing. It's a good day, good day, good day.
Well, I don't even know what to say. That thing is absolutely incredible.
Does such a good job of laying things down evenly, so fast. Amazing job, love that machine. I'm gonna be using it a lot more in the future, I can promise you that. The reason that I'm doing a top dressing now, and I wanted to explain that real quick, is that once you put sand down to level, sand has the best leveling properties, and so that is why I've done sand leveling. I'm using Mason sand again. This is the same thing I've been using over the past couple seasons. And the reason though that you need to continue that top dressing with sand is because it builds up organic matter in that sand layer. So actually putting more sand on top of it as a top dressing starts to dilute that thatch and that organic matter and starts to break it down. So that's the reason that you want to continue to do this. If you just leave it, you don't do anything with it, then you're going to start to have a buildup in there. That's going to hinder your water infiltration over time. We talked about this on our last Turfcast Live, actually. RD was talking about how sometimes even chemicals or herbicides or things like that will not be able to get through that organic matter and actually work the way that they're supposed to. Not only does it smooth things, but I'm really not going for super level with this top dressing. I'm not doing enough sand for any major leveling. I'm just putting down a light layer there to continue my top dressing, and it should just help to smooth things as well. But I didn't use a whole lot today. I just went with a light top dressing over everything. So now I'm just gonna go over the yard with a leveling rake again, just gliding over the top, push any sand that's sitting up on the top of the grass blades down into the canopy. Watering will pretty much do this too, but it's not too much work to just go over and drag this a bit and make sure all of the spots are good. So you'll definitely want to get some water on this after you do this process. You just did some stressful stuff to the lawn, but getting a good watering on it will help. And also, I'm going to be putting a dose of liquid fertilizer on this again soon, and that way the recovery will start to happen faster as well. I'll have an update on all this as soon as I see something, especially out on that section by the street. We'll see how long it takes to recover and come back and look good out there. Time for a refreshment after a long day. Thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you next time.